Hi, this is Dave Pierce from Akumina. Before we begin, we just have a couple of ground rules here. We're recording this webinar and it'll be sent within 24 hours. A Q&A will follow the presentation. You can ask questions at any time with the GoWebinar panel. And please follow us on LinkedIn at Akumina. Thank you very much. Today, our presenters are Michael Scott, the Vice President of Marketing at Akumina, and Troy Trudel, the Vice President of Alliances. Let's see. The agenda for today is who are remote and deskless workers, what are the challenges for remote and deskless workers, and what are the Akumina solutions, including some case studies we have, and then a live demo, which will be followed by a Q&A. So let's get started. I'm going to turn it over to Mike Scott.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave. So for some of you who had joined us last week, you're probably familiar with this slide that we had brought up, but I think it's important to note that remote and deskless work is not going away. In fact, it's becoming more and more popular as telecommuting is becoming more and more accessible, regardless of where you are geographically. And in fact, according to a CNBC report, 70% of folks are working remotely as of now, at least once a week. In addition to that, 65% of those folks actually find that they are more productive. And interestingly enough, if you look at this Forbes article that is referenced in those last two stats, 2/3 of managers actually agree with that. A lot of that is attributed to the fact that there's less day-to-day conversations, such as like water cooler discussions and things like that, that can be distractions throughout the day. From a deskless standpoint, 2.7 billion people around the world are categorized as deskless. In fact, a lot of you folks on the line, when I was going through what industries and verticals you guys are in, you're split between manufacturing, food services, nursing, retail, utilities and energy, and I even saw a couple directors of sales on this. So you guys understand that you are not behind a desk from 9 to 5. In fact, you're rarely behind a desk. You're either traveling or going out to work sites or assisting customers or patients on the floor. You don't have the luxury of having a desktop available to you at all times. Unfortunately, a lot of like employee experiences or employee hubs or intranets are set up so they're meant to be one size fits all. The problem is you guys don't have a one size fit all job. Unfortunately, they're also very static, which aren't able to adapt to changes within your role or within the organization. They're not very personalized to your specific roles either, meaning bringing in the right information that pertains to you, that's relevant to you. They're often rigid in the sense that as the company grows, they're not able to adapt with that growth. And that goes back to what it being static and not personalized. Unfortunately, because tools are not being integrated with most modern intranets or traditional employee hubs rather, there's not a lot of cross-functional departmental collaboration within these intranets, and that's due to a lot to limited functionality. They're templated in the sense that you can't go without outside of that basic template. And unfortunately for two of these last points, unfortunately for remote and deskless workers, as I previously mentioned, you're not behind a desk 9 to 5, so not having mobility within their employee hub and it being clunky and decentralized, meaning tools are not connected to the hub. Whether I saw some IT folks signed up for this, IT directors. Think about ServiceNow and how often your help desk employees are in that solution. Unfortunately, those solutions are often not connected. And for folks who are non-help desk in the field, think about the tools they're using day to day, or for a retail worker that needs to access the online store to see what's available or what's in inventory. Often they're having to go into the back of the store and go through a variety of different boxes or whatnot to see if something is available. And a lot of times, in the olden days of internet, it kind of looked like this. Pretty basic, not very inviting, and not user-friendly at all. With that said, I want to hand it over to my colleague, Trudel, who will walk you through a couple of use cases, who Akumina is, as well as our live demo.
Great, thanks, Mike. So a little bit about who we are and what we focus on. We are an employee experience company. We focus on building a platform that allows our partners and customers to build the right experiences for their employees. And that certainly can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people based on, one, the type of company that we're working with, and then two, the very specific use case that company might be trying to solve. And so you'll get a little flavor of that in terms of what our platform can do in general during the demo and case studies, but then specifically, what are some examples of, remote and deskless workers that we can help out with. So again, we're a software platform. We're going to be focusing on solutions that we can provide on this topic. And so if you take a look at really what kind of our mantra is, it's about not just providing an experience platform, but providing it in a different way than you would think of traditionally being able to deploy these employee-centric solutions. For the longest time, building out employee-facing solutions were difficult, both in terms of deployment and then ongoing operation and management. And what we really strive to do is provide a system that's easy to implement. So allow you to launch quicker than you could in the past, allow you to have ready-made components and ready-made capabilities that you can leverage to get to where you want to get with your employees much more quickly, to allow you to operate that in an ongoing capacity in a more efficient way as well, adding new components, adding new capabilities, adding new content, things like that. And then from a management perspective, making it easier to manage without having to have highly specialized skills in these heavy legacy platforms that you've typically used to build these types of portals, whether they be an intranet or some other employee portal. And so that's really what we focus on in terms of what our platform is designed to do. And as we add new capabilities with every release, we really look at one of these three pillars and try to understand how is this making it easier to implement or operate or manage. And we'll go through this as we get into the demo today and show you different examples of that. When we get into kind of what we look at for types of solutions that our software it can be a good fit for, certainly there is your traditional intranet that you may want to put in front of all employees, whether they be sitting in an office or in a remote location from their home or otherwise, or again even deskless with mobile devices as their only access to that interface. That's a good use case for us. But we also provide the ability for you to communicate better with your employees, again, across all those different use cases, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We provide you the ability to collaborate better with employees, again, of all types. We, as Mike mentioned, make it easier for you to integrate with other back office systems. So if you want to bring things to the fore for an employee, you can do that. It might be sitting in maybe it's a time and attendance system, maybe it's a expense system, something like that. Mobility is also huge for all of our customers, certainly, but certainly for this topic. We've got a lot of different solutions for that as well, including native mobility that we'll take a look at today, so that if you do want to put very kind of tailored mobile solutions in front of employees, you can do so with the platform. And then we've got a strong content management system that really kind of pulls all this together. And I'll touch on pretty much every one of these today, kind of through the lens of the different examples that we go through. But that's just kind of how we look at the market and what we think of as an employee experience platform. It's much more than just launching yet another intranet. It's really about providing capabilities for all of these different things. So let's take a look at a couple of case studies here and then get into the platform demo. So if we go in and take a look at this first case study here, it's one of my favorites because I'm up here in the Boston area and I'm a lifelong Red Sox fan. But it also tells a great story in terms of the topic that we're discussing today, and really enabling those employees that were not being enabled through technology before. And namely, if you think about an organization like the Red Sox, they're unique, amongst their peers. They're not, but they're unique amongst organizations in terms of they have a permanent employee base in the hundreds, right? That are full-time employees. They work for the Red Sox year-round. Think, finance, operations, HR, marketing, those functions, if you want to think of it that way. But then they've got this whole notion of seasonal staff, not just for the baseball season, but for any of the other events that they run. Fenway now is used for a lot of different events, from concerts to other types of sporting events. Even in the wintertime, they'll run things like, hockey and freestyle skiing competitions and things like that at Fenway Park. And so they've really kind of branched out beyond just providing a venue for baseball games. They do this year-round now at this point. And during those events, they go from staff within the hundreds to staffing up thousands of people, either, again, for the seasonal events like baseball games or for the other supporting events. And prior to launching their new solution with our software, they never gave those other employees, the majority of their employees, if you want to think of it that way, during those times of year, they never gave them access into their internal systems. So they never had information, about what's going on that day, or, the ability to get in and look things up if they had a question. Even something as simple as, letting people know that there was a rain delay or the game was going to be rained out. They had to send out like text messages or call people or just wait for them to show up and tell them to go home, or that they had to wait around for a few hours. And so it was a very disjointed experience. Well, now all of their employees, even those seasonal employees, have the ability to get into their intranet, either via the desktop or via their mobile device. Again, most of their employees, on these days are going to be accessing things via mobility, and they can get information. They can get information about what's going on at that day, that event. Maybe who the celebrities are that are going to be there, who's throwing out the first pitch, the schedule, things like that. They have access to internal tools like chatbots and other things that make it easier for them to look up information and get their jobs done. So for them, it was really all about providing a much more modern intranet for everybody, but really focusing on how do we get information to those people that typically have not been able to get inside of our systems and see the information that we can provide. So that's a great example of a true deskless worker where they never have access to a laptop or a desktop that they sit at. Everything is a mobile device, and kind of some of the benefits they have gained is by providing better customer service. Certainly, if an employee can get to information in a better way, they can provide customers information in a better way. It also makes the employees happier, because I know that I can just check my mobile device and see if the game's rained out or if there's a weather delay. And so it's easier for me as an employee to understand my responsibilities and when I need to be there and I don't need to be there. So really kind of some core use cases that the Red Sox have been able to focus on, really by implementing, again, a modern platform, and on top of that, building a solution that allows those deskless workers to participate as well. If you take a look at this next use case here, this is an organization that provides high-end beds, if you want to think of it that way. Sleep Number provides beds that allow people to adjust the height, adjust the firmness of the bed. Really much more advanced than just the standard mattress that you would go in and buy in a store. And one of the things they wanted to focus on was providing their in-store staff with the ability to get to information about products very, very quickly without a lot of searching around. And so when I go into this interface and I'm a Sleep Number employee in the store, I have right on my tablet the ability to go in and see product information, see different promotions, see different inventory numbers, things like that help me as a seller work with the customer in the store and give them tailored information. I don't have to go into a generic intranet and try to search for things, or look through an old manual with promotional slicks or anything like that. I have everything at my fingertips that I need to be able to provide that customer with better service, because I can get to information faster. So for them, again, it's very much tailored around providing those store workers with information they need to do their jobs more effectively, and in turn provide better customer service. Because if you think about any organization that's customer facing, like Sleep Number, it could be people in travel, it could be people in food services, could be any of those organizations. Really, the face of your company to your customer are your employees. Certainly you've got great branding like Sleep Number does. You can have great brand messaging, great promotions, great commercials. All of those things help to build your brand. But when a customer comes in and wants to interact with you as a brand, that interaction with that employee is really what sets that bar, either high or low. And that employee's ability to give them a great experience is oftentimes only as good as what they have access to, right? Can you imagine if a Sleep Number employee had to go into the back room to look in a binder to find information every time a customer had a question? That would be a very disjointed experience, and it wouldn't leave kind of a great sense of trust for that customer. Now they have the ability to go in and provide information very quickly, very seamlessly, without having to have that kind of technology barrier that you might previously have with disconnected systems or not providing that experience to an employee right up front. And so that's just a couple of use cases of kind of true remote and deskless workers. We'll talk a little bit more about those as I get into the demo and show you some different examples, and certainly can answer any questions you have in the Q&A a little bit later on as well. Before I get into the demo, and we're going to switch from this machine to my demo machine here in a second, I did want to talk a little bit about our software. Now, given the time that we have today and the fact that this is a presentation to a larger audience, what I'm going to focus on today in the demonstration really is what you see at the top of this slide here, the things labeled the user tier. And that's really the experiences that you can build. You're seeing some of them across the top and the right-hand side of the slide there, including a mobile-only experience and some others. We'll go and look at a few of those and talk a little bit about how our software helps you build those types of experiences. Then there's on the left-hand side the management experience that we'll talk about as well, in terms of how do people launch new content or new capabilities with the software. I'll focus on those primarily today, but as you can see in the slide, there's a lot more to the software, certainly more than we're going to cover on a call like today. If you do want to know more about the rest of the platform or very specific use cases that you might have, we certainly would be happy to set up follow-on one-on-one presentations to make sure we can answer all your questions and really cover the rest of the software as well. But I did want to just kind of set the stage with, think of us as providing, two core experiences, right? There's a workplace experience that I'm going to put in front of the employees, again, whether it's organizational wide like the Red Sox, or a very kind of niche experience for those store workers like I talked about for Sleep Number. Those are both examples of that workplace experience that our software can help you provide. Could also be, the management experience for those people creating content that people need to consume. So when the Red Sox go in and they build something that they call day of game or day of event, which is basically a roster of everything happening around any of their events, whether it's a game or otherwise, somebody has to create that content that the other employees can then consume. That Akumina App Manager that we'll get into is an environment that they would go in to do that within. And that's really, again, what we're going to focus on in the presentation today. So just give me one moment here and I'll just switch to presentation mode on my other machine. All right, so now you should be seeing my demo screen here, and I've got a few different sites and examples that I'll get into today. What you're seeing here is what we call a foundation site, and we've got a couple of these that we work with, and our partners have actually built foundation sites that they use to launch with their clients. But think of this as a great way to get up and running very, very quickly. The Red Sox actually started with a version of one of these sites as their starting point to get up and running very quickly, and then they easily built new capabilities into that experience, things like integrations with their enterprise chat, integrations with MLB feeds, things like that are very specific to what they're trying to do. But they were able to launch very, very rapidly with a site like this that gave them components and capabilities that they always wanted to have, but didn't necessarily want to build themselves or pay someone to build from the ground up. So think in terms of, I want to provide people with news and information. Whether it's, true articles and communication, or whether it's, information about the business that I need them to have access to. I want to give them access to other people in the organization, allow them to search for those people, find coworkers that they can collaborate with. Maybe I want to give them access to things like rich media and a whole host of other capabilities. We've got about 100 plus of these components. We call them widgets, but think of them as encapsulated items that I have the ability to launch with very, very quickly and be able to create these types of experiences. And I'll get more into the front end here in a little bit and show you some different examples. But before I do that, I wanted to go off to the other side of the application, which is, again, what we call the App Manager. And think of this in terms of, this is a console for me as somebody managing that site or that solution, because again, sometimes it's not an intranet site, and again, I'll show you some different examples today. Sometimes it's another type of site that I'm giving people access to get their jobs done. But in any event, I'm still going to have content and capabilities that I want to be able to manage there. So let's say that I need to go in and I need to manage, news items or content like that. Well, I've got apps that allow me to go in and do that. And it's very much like, an app that I might have on my smartphone or my tablet where, it's an encapsulated thing that I can do. It's very easy for me to understand. I don't have to go through a ton of training to be able to go in and use something like this. And so, for example, in the news app, I can go in, edit existing items or go in and create new items very, very easily. So if I wanted to add a news item here, I have the ability to go in and do that very quickly. When I get in here, it's a very straightforward interface, much like working in, kind of any word processor software. I can go in and create this content. I can even go in and target it at particular, whether it's in this case, department or location or job function or even role, things like that. And I'll get into that a little bit more as we get a little bit deeper. But think in terms of this being a console that, based on my permissions in the system, allow me to do the things that I need to do. So rightfully, you're not going to have every employee that you have in this interface. This is really, again, for those administrators, for content authors, for people building new pages and new sites. There's even front-end capabilities that we give to those people. But that's very much part of the equation, is allowing people to manage the content much more easily than they could in the past. That's certainly one of the core challenges that all of our customers face these days with legacy systems is, they could build, a good, if not great, user experience on top of those things. It might take you a long time, much longer certainly than, starting with something you can build with our software. But then managing it was always a challenge. And so those interfaces would become stale and outdated, and information wouldn't be relevant for people because nobody could update it. So you definitely need to think about both sides of that equation, which is why I always want to start by showing people kind of both ends of things here. Now, I'll get back to this site in a little bit and talk about management. One of the things I did want to talk about really quickly here, before I go off into some other use cases, is when we talk about providing information to mobile and remote workers, there's kind of two different things a lot of times. A remote worker could be somebody that works at a remote office, or could be somebody that works from home a lot. So they may have access to, like I do, a desktop or a laptop that they have access to. So they have larger screen real estate. Other times, that mobile or deskless worker truly is deskless, meaning all they have is their mobile device. Could be a tablet, could be a phone, but they don't have a desktop, they don't have a laptop, they're not provided with those company machines. And what we do is we provide our software in kind of two fashions that allows those people to interact with the content. One of those is, if I just shrink the screen down here really quickly, all of our sites certainly, but all of our components, all these widgets that we've been taking a look at, they all use a technique called responsive design. And that means that they're able to render appropriately based on the size of real estate that I have in my browser. So here I'm emulating a smartphone or a large smartphone or small tablet. If I want to go in and open this up a bit more again, I can start getting more screen real estate. So this might be a larger tablet view, and then certainly again, the full desktop view. So that's one of the ways that you can provide, again, that interface for those remote employees, but certainly those deskless employees, is allow them right on the browser on their smartphone to go in and get to the site and log in and view it. Another way that you can do so with our software is through a native mobile app, where now this is an app that I install on my employees' phones. I allow them to download, and I allow them to have access to. Now, this gives you a number of different capabilities in terms of being able to create a bespoke experience, certainly, for those employees. You may not want to show everything on that mobile app that you would show on the full, say, intranet or portal experience. That's one of the things you can do, certainly. But you can also start then taking advantage of native phone functionality. So maybe you want to take advantage of things like location awareness or push notifications, or even start taking advantage of things like biometric sign-in. So if you want to allow them to use their thumbprint to log in and not have to remember a username and password, you get those capabilities added as well. We provide both options. Some customers go with the responsive design that I showed you in that other site. Some go, sorry about the notification there. Some go with something like this, where it's providing me with, again, an interface on my mobile device that I can go in and use and get a great experience across. And again, the options are available for our customers. Some frankly use both, where some employees have that rich desktop experience because they have all that real estate, and other employees have the mobile-only experience because, one, that's all they have, and two, they might only need certain information, right? If you think about, say a retail store worker in the food industry, right? Somebody working in a grocery store. Well, they're not going to need access to an environment like this where they have all the departments, all the news, all the information in their interface. That's going to be distracting when they're on the clock. What they might need, however, is they might need to see shift scheduling. They might need to see things like an employee manual or policies and procedures they can look up really quickly. Maybe they need to see some other personalized information. That's where that mobile app can really be a great benefit, because you can craft just the right experience for those employees when you need it. And that's one of the things that we always focus on with our customers when we're working with them is, really what are they trying to accomplish and helping them build the right solution. So a couple of different examples in that vein would be, if we take a look at something like this example here. So this would definitely be for remote worker, not necessarily deskless. This would be, an example of helping somebody get onboarded at a company that isn't necessarily sitting in a company office. And I know this through personal experience. I'm not going to name the very large company I used to work for, but it numbered in the hundreds of thousands of employees, and I worked from home, and I was, 100 miles away from the nearest office. And so when I onboarded, I was literally emailed a Word document from my boss that had all the different things that I needed to do to get started up. Well, that's not really a modern way of doing things these days. And that's not really what our customers are after. They're after something like this, where they can actually build an experience for somebody that on day one, I get to see, hey, here is the nearest office if you need to go into it. And here's your support team. Here's your schedule for the day. And here's who you're going to be working with to do these different things. So here's, I pick up my laptop at 9, then at 1 o'clock, I've got an HR onboarding meeting. Who am I going to be working with? And this really gives me, as somebody coming in and onboarding for the first time, a very focused interface for me to be able to get those tasks done. Now, after my first day, this experience goes away, and I get access to the rest of the intranet, the rest of the portals, all the other solutions. So that's a good example of providing that kind of tailored experience for somebody that you're trying to onboard, specifically if they're going to be in a remote situation. You want to give them that great experience, because you don't have that ability to be face-to-face with them all the time. And so that's one of the examples. Another example that I like to bring up is very much around providing somebody with a very tailored experience to get their jobs done that isn't this large intranet experience. And so this is a retail experience, for example. And so this gives me, as a retail store manager, the ability on my tablet to come in and see all the things that are important to me. So what are my messages that I need to pay attention to, both in terms of my email and things like I've got notifications about new things that are coming into the store. I've got my tasks for the day that I need to go and accomplish. I've got my calendar and scheduling that I need to keep track of. I've got my staffing schedule I need to keep track of, and on in this experience. So this is very much tailored to me as a worker in the things that I need to accomplish, and it's bringing in information from multiple different systems, both in terms of things that are very personal to me, like my time off and my PTO, as well as things that are important to the organization. Who are our top customers and the products that they've been looking at, or what's the store performance look like, and bringing all of that together into one experience that gives me everything I need in one place. And so those are the different types of things that we see specifically when you talk about kind of remote or deskless workers particularly. They need access to this information very quickly in a highly personalized way. They certainly also need news and information as well, which you can see here, but it's typically a different experience than what you would see for, I'm going to have to refresh my demo set here, what you would see for kind of your traditional intranet. And we see a mix across our customers, both in terms of what they need to make available to people. And oftentimes it's based on that persona, who's logging in. So for example, Sleep Number has an intranet, and they give access, the intranet access to the store employees, but when they log in on that tablet device, they're given that store experience first and foremost, because that's what's most important to them. Same thing with other customers of ours that have intranet experiences alongside of those more tailored experiences for particular workers. If you think of, for example, if it was a plant floor worker or something like that, they might need access to information on, say, a screen in a break room or something like that with rotating news and information like that. That's an example of somebody that doesn't typically have a digital interface, but you still want to provide information to, news and info like this. That's another good example. So that's a little bit about some different examples, both in terms of the case studies we looked at and the demo sites. If we take a look a little bit more deeply in terms of the content management capabilities, before we open it up for questions, as I mentioned, you have the ability to allow people to manage content like news articles and others, but we also give people, and this would be certainly for more advanced people, the ability to go in and manage things like launching new pages, launching new capabilities, or even just go in and edit and organize existing pages. So if I wanted to come in here and I wanted to go in and edit this page, I have the ability to go in and do that as an end user that has access to this interface, right? So this again is not for every employee. This is for those employees that are managing content, managing the pages, giving them an easy way to add new things if I want to go in and add new items to this environment or move them around. I've got tools and capabilities for that. And then on top of that, if we want to get beyond, say, content management, and you want to start talking about things like maybe I need to go in and I need to create different personas. So as people come in, like that onboarding example, I can show them different content. We've got different capabilities like our ability to create new sites, or our persona builder that allows you to go in and build those bespoke personas. So maybe I've got a new hire persona. Maybe I've got a persona that's for a store worker or something like that. And we can support any number of personas you want to have back here that then allow you to tailor content and experiences. Literally, the same site that I would go to as Mike could show very different things based on the fact that Mike's in a different persona than I'm in. We have all of those tools and capabilities built into the application. And so that's what I wanted to show for today. Again, certainly it's not designed to be a demo that goes over every bit and byte of what we have, but certainly open for Q&A now, and certainly very open to setting up one-on-one presentations with our team members for anybody that wants to get a deeper dive into the software.
Okay, our first question is from Joe. Can you set up governance to ensure the right people see what they're supposed to?
Sure, yeah, so I mean, again, we didn't get into it too deeply today, but our software rides on top of the Microsoft productivity and cloud system. So think things like Office 365 and Azure. And so those underlying platforms have great security and permission models. We adhere to all of those. So if I'm in, a certain role, maybe I'm in a management role and I can see content, but maybe Dave or Mike can't because they're in a different department or a different role, we're going to adhere to all those permissions and that governance that you can set up. So there's not just personas that we have that you can use to kind of tailor the experience. There's also that governance aspect of it, so that you can ensure that people aren't seeing protected HR information or things like that when they shouldn't be.
Okay, here's another question. How many apps can you add to Akumina?
So as far as the number you can add, there's really no limit. We've built the platform so that it's highly malleable if you want to think about it that way. Again, we ship with about 100 different components. Our customers and partners have built many, many more. If you want to think about the Red Sox, for example, they've built some components that nobody else in the world besides other MLB teams would use, right? Like a game feed from the MLB systems that literally can show, what's happening in a game. That's not going to be applicable to any other company in any other industry, but they were able to build those and frankly make them available to other teams if they want to. So think of it in terms of we ship with a lot of capability components, both widgets and apps, but there's no limit to how many you can add or even how you could modify our existing apps and widgets to accommodate your use cases.
All right, this one's from Kate. Can you build a custom role-based user interface?
Yeah, that's very much akin to what I showed with that onboarding example, with based on that person's role, and it's not just my role in perpetuity, right? That was Sarah's role that day, if you want to think of it, right? She's a new hire, it's day one, her role is to get onboarded. That experience would change in her second day and certainly her third day and then her sixth and ninth month and all of those things, especially if she changes positions or locations, responsibilities, things like that.
Okay. All right, that looks like it takes care of the questions. I want to thank everybody for coming today and participating in the webinar. The webinar will be, the recording will be available 24 hours after this ends. And I guess that's it. Thank you very much.